got Samantha Dawn joining us in the studio, mind body therapist. Welcome.
Thank you, Bianca. It's nice to be here.
Good to have you here. Actually, can you just swing that mic closer to? Perfect, got it. All right, so today we're going to talk about emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, self-care, the importance of healing, and that sort of leads into a lot of other things. As we were talking before we started, it's all sort of embodied: body, mind, soul. We always talk about that. It's never just one thing, is it?
It's not. It's very hard to separate it out, and I think we do run into trouble when we try and pull out just one aspect of our well-being without looking at the other aspects.
That's right. That's right. So how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for many years. It's been an evolving kind of journey. It started many years ago when my children were very small. They're young adults now. And I started off doing food education, nutrition education, and teaching people how to live a healthier lifestyle through the medium of food. And this kind of evolved because what I saw is that it's never really just about the food. The amount of people that we can give the information about what to eat, and then they go away and they follow that and run with it and change their lifestyle is actually quite small. There's so many other things at play. So I ended up doing more study and just learning on that journey and moving into more coaching people one-on-one. And as the years progressed, it's amazing and really rewarding. And then I ended up training in hypnotherapy as well, just to really help shift people through those last little blocks that they weren't able to get through on their own.
So hypnotherapy, a lot of people were into that. It's a thing, isn't it?
It really is. The mind is very powerful.
Can people? I mean, I know that we use it to sort of get people to relax and open up. Is that how you sort of employ hypnotherapy with your clients to just start so that they can sort of open up any blocks?
It is. So hypnotherapy is a process where you take someone into a really deeply relaxed brainwave state. So when we're awake and we're talking like we are now, we're in a beta state. When we get a little bit more relaxed, like maybe you're driving your car, you're sort of daydreaming a little bit, you're in more of an alpha state. When you go a little bit deeper again, you're in a theta state. And in that state, it's often experienced in that sort of period between waking and sleeping. When you're in that space, the conscious mind kind of switches off and it goes off to the background, and the subconscious mind is much more suggestible. So when we can give messages while someone is in that brainwave state, they're much more likely to take hold if they're acceptable to the person. It kind of just gets around some of those limiting blocks that the conscious mind keeps really firmly in place, and it really gets some amazing results. It's incredible.
That sounds like a sort of a meditative state. When people sort of meditate, is it similar to that?
It absolutely is. Yeah, it totally is, and you can do it yourself. Experienced meditators do take themselves into those brainwave states, and you can be active about it. You can reprogram your mind in that state. It's just harder to do because you need to have a level of skill with meditation to be able to take yourself to that state and then keep yourself there while bringing in those new messages. So it's a little bit easier if someone does it for you, but it certainly is doable yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of guided meditations out there too, isn't there? With the music and is it the theta? You said theta? Is it the theta waves that makes your brain go into a certain space? Yeah. Do you do them at night?
I am a very committed meditator. I like to meditate in the morning, and then I do a little short one at night. And I would say it's changed my life. I definitely did not find it easy when I started learning many, many years ago. I'm that kind of person who always had a very busy mind, found it very hard to settle and get still. But I stuck with it, and and it's a really important part of my life now.
Yeah, and I think we learn to be okay with the chat. I mean, didn't even the Buddha say that the mind is never empty? You know, it's always got, that's the nature of our mind, just like the nature of water is wet. You know, the nature of our mind is always to think and have thoughts, but it's just being okay with it and just watching them go by and not attaching to them.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes that can be the challenge for people in itself. They think, oh, I've got to have my mind silent, but it's not. We just have to sort of let go of that attachment to our thoughts, kind of like, you know, the train going by. Instead of getting on each train that comes by, we just watch it go.
Yeah. Is our mind still thinking when we're sleeping? I think someone said that even when we sleep, it's not empty. You know, obviously that's why we dream. Some people dream, some people don't dream, but even those who don't dream, the mind's not empty, as in the subconscious is still happening, things are happening.
They certainly are. And I think we actually do a lot of important emotional processing in our dream state. Yeah, there is some research around that having that active dreaming time is really important for processing the things that we go through in our waking life. So yes, the mind never stops.
Yeah. Some people say they want to dream, but they can't dream.
I think it's more probably that they don't remember their dreams.
Oh, really? Isn't that? So everyone dreams?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I could be wrong about that.
But
But
I think I've heard that, what you just said.
Does. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. And then there's others that remember it vividly, like where they were and, you know, the angle of the person's moustache and what they said, and even the names can change. Like one person can start off with one name and end up in the end of the dream with a different name. You hear people just saying it's like a story.
Yeah.
Like a movie script or something.
Yes, and
So interesting.
there is a process called lucid dreaming that
That's
some people are able to actually be aware that they're dreaming and control what happens in their dreams. So that's pretty cool. But you know, I think that's pretty rare as well.
Lucid dreaming. Wasn't that Vanilla Sky, that movie with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz? Wasn't that about lucid dreaming?
Possibly. I
think years
don't
ago.
think I can bring that to mind right now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It was a strange film. Yeah, I think that one was about lucid dreaming. Well, I've got a cousin who can do sort of things like that, and he even said he can go to bed and say, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5:07, or change it the next time, I'm going to wake up at 7 minutes past 7, and he programs his mind, he relaxes, and he wakes up at the time without an alarm.
Oh wow. He's
Don't know
probably
how
got
to
a lot
do
of potential he could harness there.
Yeah. But I think everyone can do it, like the power of the mind.
It's amazing. Yeah, we're very limited by what we believe to be true, or what we believe that we're capable of. And when we can shift past those limiting beliefs, it's amazing what's possible for us.
Yeah. So is it, we only use about 10% of our brain or something, our capacities?
It's something like that.
Very, very low. Yeah, I don't know the exact, but around about. Yeah. So how can people become more sort of emotionally aware, you know, that emotional intelligence and emotional awareness? Because, you know, we live in a busy world, people are busy, we've got commitments, we've got responsibilities, and we think that we sort of are up there, but, you know, a lot of things do get stored, and then we think everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I'm out of it, I'm tired, or I'm stressed, or something, it feels like it's just piled onto me emotionally, and people just have an outburst when they think, well, I was totally fine this morning, but they're not. Like things build up.
They do.
So how do we sort of increase our awareness of that?
Well, I think, I mean, that's a big question, but I think that at the heart of it, it's about being aware of what's happening as it's happening. So the more that we can increase our mindfulness in the moment, the more we can be aware, so that we can attend to things as they happen, rather than having them build up and be this huge big thing that just kind of explodes.
Yeah.
We can see those signals along the way. Another thing I think that's really important in keeping that sort of emotional balance, emotional awareness, is accepting that what we feel is actually valid, and that it has a purpose and a reason. Because I do see across the board that we are trained out of being able to feel what we feel. We're told that, we're being too emotional, or maybe even just circumstances don't permit us to feel what we feel in that moment. but it really is key to being able to manage our emotions, to be able to accept what they are and how they're arising, so that we can express them in a healthy way.
So that sort of seems like, you know, someone holding up a mirror to themselves, sort of their personality, you know, because some people are quick to anger, or some people are super zen and things don't bother them, or they hear things going on and like you think, you know, is that person like breathing? You know, that just things don't bother some people, but other people things frustrate them. Maybe they're, you know, really organised or like to have things done in a certain way. They've got a structure and they're, you know, a little bit I don't know, if things don't fall into place, it is challenging in that moment, and I get that too. You know, you sort of understand both sides and all different types of personalities that we have to deal with every day, whether it be in the workplace, family, whatever.
That's right. We're all so different.
Oh, so different.
And I think the more we understand ourselves, the more accepting we are of other people's differences as well, rather than expecting everyone to be the same. Some people need more quiet, some people need more stimulation, some people need a really organised environment. For other people, that's just really boring and restrictive. And I think when we are more accepting of ourselves, we actually are more appreciative of the diversity of other people, so we can be more easygoing. I think things don't bother us as much.
That's interesting, because we're always told, you know, accept others. Not everyone is like you. You know, that sort of thing. But as it makes sense how you say that we have to accept ourselves first and say, okay, maybe I am a person that just gets angry, or I'm a person that gets frustrated, or, you know, some people were really, I don't know how to explain it without offending, but, you know, some people just really knowledgeable, or really their mind works fast, and they just think, why can't everyone just keep up with me? You know, you hear people say that too, you know, these people that sort of feel that. But yeah, to understand oneself and then everyone else.
It's
It's a challenge.
To say.
It's hard to balance.
It's a process to do it. But it's a good one. You know, I think the more that we do it, the more at peace we are in ourselves.
Now, so you do plant-based nutrition, eating psychology, lots of things there that are very interesting. Having a good relationship with food. We all know the connection between gut health and the mind. You know, I think a Greek philosopher said it hundreds of years ago. Some Greek philosopher said it, that a lot of issues in the mind stem from the stomach and what we eat. So if we eat wrong and we eat dead food, like, I don't know, what's dead food? Bread, animal flesh, I don't know. I'm not trying to put anyone off here, but, you know, it might not be. I mean, that's just, I mean, alive food is like fruit and veg that you've just picked from a tree. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, if you eat food with a high vibrational energy, that's alive with hydration, like a citrus or orange or apple is mostly water. So I suppose that sort of food is going to be good for the body with the nutrients and the hydration. It's going to make us feel good in our mind.
There's so much in that with plant-based nutrition and why it helps us. But you're right, I have heard the gut being referred to as the second brain. We have about 2 kilos of gut bacteria in our gut. It's amazing, and they,
good and bad bacteria.
But most of it forms our immune system, creates neurotransmitters, hormones. It's good for us, it's beneficial. The gut bacteria that we have actually keeps us alive and functioning well. And the beneficial bacteria that we have, they feed on plant fibre. So if we're deficient in plant fibre, we are going to be more likely to have those unhealthy bacteria proliferate and take over. And when we think about, you know, gut health and the microbiome and how important it is for our mental health as well as our physical health. Serotonin is produced in our gut. 95% of the serotonin that we produce is made in our gut from our gut bacteria. So you want to be feeding those guys the food that they like. And yes, people do find that once they transition to a whole food plant-based diet, and there are some differences there between that and a vegan diet. People do get happier. They just feel lighter and things feel easier. And there's a number of reasons for that. We've got the mental side of it, you know, with more serotonin, but we've also got lowered inflammation that way of eating actually causes in the body, which is calming, makes us feel more vibrant and more energized as well.
That's interesting. Okay, so the gut bacteria, do you say 2 kilos of it?
Yeah, it's sort of varying.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Up to 2 kilos. It is, yeah. We are more bacterial cells than we are human cells.
And is the bad bacteria like heavier or denser than the good bacteria? You know, like when people eat well, they feel light in the stomach, but when they eat wrong, they feel heavy.
I don't know that that's just due to the type of bacteria. It's probably to do with the types of foods, because we don't digest them as easily, and the inflammatory effects in our bodies that they have. There's lots of different things that can affect our health and make us feel sluggish and heavy. One is having a lot of fats and having oils in the diet. So I don't have any added oil in my diet, and in a whole food plant-based diet we don't use any. And
so how do you get your fats?
We get them through the whole foods themselves.
Oh, so no oil at all?
No, and
Zero.
What
about tuna in olive oil? You get the tuna in water?
Well, I don't eat tuna.
Oh, you don't eat tuna? All right. Well, people that do eat tuna, not even that, the oil that's around it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because studies have shown that the endothelial lining, so the lining of our blood vessels, actually doesn't perform as well when we have oils in our diet. It gets into our bloodstream and inhibits the release of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a gas that we release, which expands our capillaries, expands our blood vessels. So if we need oxygen flowing through our bodies, we need it to be flowing everywhere. And when there's oil in the diet or too much fat, it just doesn't be released in the same way. And what I've noticed with clients when they've transitioned to whole food plant-based diet, that they have changes that they just would not expect. Like one woman, she had to get her glasses prescription reduced because her vision improved. You see people's eyes go clear, their skin goes brighter, capacity for exercise goes up. And a lot of it is because all the nutrients, all the oxygen, all the blood is getting everywhere it needs to be, instead of being restricted and constricted from lack of nitric oxide flowing freely.
How come we're not taught this at school?
Yes, that is a very good question, and some people are working very hard on that at the moment. So Doctors for Nutrition is an organisation I've had a bit to do with over the years, and they're a non-profit organisation that's been founded for a few years now, and they're working to get this integrated in the curriculum in medical schools, because you know, as of just a couple of years ago, there was literally like 3 or 4 hours of nutrition training in a medical degree.
That's right.
And so yeah, there's some really good people doing a lot of work to change that.
Do you think it's going to change?
Well, I hope so.
'Cause that's a big beast, the medical.
It is.
What do we call it?
And it is very tricky when, you know, there are lots of vested interests and lots of people make money from illness. And so when you have that going on, it can be very hard to get those non-profitable messages out there, because, you know, there's not much money to be made from healthy people.
True story. Heard that a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? There's a lot of, like we were saying before we started, there's a lot of info out there. We sort of can't avoid it. As in, if people say, you know, where do I find it? You can find information. You just type it in on YouTube or anywhere about, like we said, intermittent fasting or health or plant-based things or recipes. There's just information out there that we can get our hands on, or even speaking to the right people like yourself.
We can. I think what's really hard for people is that there's so much conflicting information out there that it's overwhelming. And it's also a bit disheartening because people think that they've got the right information. So they're, you know, doing all these things, like paleo is a big one. I see a lot of people going paleo, trying to
What's that again?
doing paleo.
Yeah, what's that?
It's no carbs, so they're eating a lot of meat, they're
No
eating a lot of
carbs.
fat. It's not my thing, so yeah,
Oh,
they do eat
that's right.
vegetables.
They eat
but
a lot of fat. That's
Mhm,
right. I've seen
mhm.
that on Instagram. All the people eating an egg and bacon. That's their fancy
Yeah.
diet.
That's it, and you will
That
see.
can't be good for the heart.
It's not. It's terrible for the heart. It's terrible for cholesterol. But there's a lot of people out there saying this is great, and so people try it. You know,
Yeah.
they're just doing their best.
Yeah.
And then they'll try this diet and they'll try that lifestyle. So I think before going to YouTube and Google and doing all that research yourself, it's really important to make sure you're starting from a reputable source. And one place, if people are interested in plant-based nutrition, to go to nutritionfacts.org. And I often refer people to this site because they are not affiliated with anything. You know, they take apart research, they go through research studies and they pull them apart, looking at efficacy and, you know, what was the size of the trial and were there vested interests, and then they just publish the data. So you know that if you go there, what you're getting is current, up-to-date, research-backed information. It was founded by Dr. Michael Greger, and he wrote a book called How Not to Diet, and then he had a follow-on one called How Not to Diet, and literally it's a very hefty book, so it's, you know, I don't know how many pages, but it's huge, and about the back quarter is references, and that's important because you know, anyone can write a book, but when you're taking information for your health, you really want it to be well supported by the research. And by research that's not by people who are going to profit from your decisions.
That's right. I just will put a little side note there. There's nothing wrong with eating bacon and eggs, because I know I can hear in my head some listener might be saying, what's wrong with bacon and eggs, because that's protein, that's good. Yeah, it is, but not to have it every day, which you see these what do you call it, paleo, these Instagram people basically living on it, just living on chicken, eggs, you know.
It's not what I would recommend, but yeah,
that's right.
People go on their own journey as well.
Yeah. And maybe it's different for everyone too, and that's why I do like people to sort of see what's right for them, and that's why I like to speak to lots of different people from different fields, because look, you know, I even heard recently someone joined the show and they were saying to, you know, in winter have more oily foods, but that's different again. That's Ayurveda. That's different. And she was just saying that the body needs more oily foods in winter, but that might not work for a lot of people. We hear people saying when they have too many oily foods they don't feel good, but for a group of people it does work. So it's hard to say, isn't it? Because they swear by it. Certain people swear by that. And then you're saying not as much oil, and then we know we feel better when we have less oil. So also I tend to agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I really am a believer in letting people make the choices that are right for them. So I work with a lot of people who aren't plant-based, working on the mindset and the wellness lifestyle and all of those kind of things. And I don't judge where people are at, because a lifestyle choice has to be a choice. And if they want to go down the plant-based nutrition path with me, they can, and I can support them with that. But ultimately, I think we all need to make our own decisions for ourselves. And really, the more that we tune into ourselves, the more that we're going to know what's good for us and what's not good for us.
That's right.
If you're eating a certain way and you're feeling rubbish, well, then we need to look at what is it that's making you feel rubbish. Is it that you're too stressed at work? No, work's good. Okay, are you getting enough sleep? Yeah, sleeping fine. And I think I would rather leave people to their own decisions rather than tell them what to do.
That's right. Different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And look, you do hear people saying that, I will just say about the plant-based sort of way of life, that they do feel a bit better and lighter within their constitution, their body, just the way they walk. And you know, people saying that their joint pain has reduced significantly through plant-based. So you've got to listen to that too. And like you said, listen to your body. There's no right or wrong, whatever you want. I mean, even if people just add a bit more of one thing and less of another, just to tap into oneself, how they're feeling.
Definitely. I like to say to people, if they're thinking about it but they're not sure, I will say try it as an experiment.
Yeah.
See what happens. Do it for a week, see how you feel. Try it for 2 weeks, see how you feel. You know, if it doesn't make any difference, go back to what you were doing before. And I think for me,
right.
that's a really light way for them to have their own experience, rather than me saying, do it like this.
Yeah.
They can actually try it. They can see if it makes a difference. And 9 times out of 10, it does. But again, it's their choice.
Yeah. How long have you been plant-based?
Oh, look, I'm terrible for remembering years and numbers. But
Rough?
yeah.
Like your whole life?
No, it was
Adult
a
life?
gradual progression from being vegetarian for probably about the last 15, 20 years. And then I moved towards plant-based. Probably from about 2014, I got quite ill and then started moving closer and closer towards whole food plant-based by then. I have to say that oil was the last thing to go, and that was quite a leap for me because with all my nutrition education background, I was teaching the Mediterranean diet, which had olive oil in it, and that was a really, it was a big thing for me to shift because I believed it was really healthy. But what I didn't realise is that in a traditional Mediterranean diet model, olive oil would have been a condiment. They would have, you know, put so much effort into making this liquid gold that they would use tiny little bits of. They wouldn't be slathering it on
we use it.
Jamie Oliver style. They wouldn't be deep frying. They just wouldn't have had enough. And so in that context, it wouldn't have done them any harm whatsoever. So yeah, it was a progression.
That makes sense. So you noticed you felt better with I was going to say less oil, but it's no oil, isn't it?
No oil, but
you feel better with no oil.
One thing that I noticed when I cut out the oil was, so I live up in the hills, in the Adelaide Hills, and I've always liked to go for walks with friends, you know, have a chat. It's very hilly, and it would always be, you know, you'd try and not be the one doing the talking on the way up the hill. And when I cut out the oil, I found that I just could breathe all the way up the hill. I wouldn't get puffed out, and I hadn't changed my exercise at all. It just was because I had that greater capacity for oxygen that I was able to just walk up the hill without losing my breath. And that's maintained. The other thing about whole food plant-based eating is that we can eat as much as we like and we don't gain weight. You just stay at, you know, I'm probably the same weight that I was when I was in my 20s, but it didn't stay that way when I was vegetarian and I was heading sort of like to my late 30s. I started putting on weight just like everyone else does.
With the cheese and that.
Did
you eat eggs? Did you eat eggs?
I ate cheese. Yeah, I ate eggs.
Cheese, eggs, milk.
Yeah, I didn't have heaps of milk, but yeah, did have dairy, and
makes a difference, doesn't it? All the little bit here, a little bit there. In a year, if you add it all up.
Yeah.
But they say we don't really need dairy. I mean, the first thing we hear people saying when they got ill, they go to a naturopath or nutritionist or doctor, and they say cut out dairy, cut out coffee, cut out meat. You know, when people are sick and they want to heal. So it makes sense that okay, if everyone's saying that, well, we don't need it. And to heal, we definitely need to get rid of it. So what are we doing eating it anyway when we're healthy? We don't need it.
Yeah, we do not need it. And interestingly, the countries like Japan that have no dairy in a traditional diet have virtually no osteoporosis.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need it for our strong bones. We don't need it for anything. We're the only species that actually drinks the milk of another species. It's kind of pretty gross if you really think about it like that.
It is, isn't it? That the cow's milk's for its baby calf, not for us.
That's right. So yeah, we can survive perfectly well on plants, and yeah, it's a lot lighter on the planet and a lot kinder as well. But yes, that said, most of the work that I do now isn't around nutrition. There's only certain people that come to me for that. It's more around that well-being that I find that people sort of are struggling with in day-to-day life. There's so much stress and so much kind of
Yeah.
anxiety that people are dealing with, and that seems to be the main thing I find myself working on these days.
So how can people get more life balance and enjoy life more, achieve their goals, with less struggle? Because we often hear people saying that, they might have reached certain goals, but they're always struggling, trying, and there's that tension there that's underlying it. How can people sort of get to that space where it's just let go of that pressure?
Well, that's a process. I think at the very foundation of it, we need to know who we are and what we need to thrive and what we need to flourish. You can think of us like we're all different kinds of plants, and we've got, some need lots of water, some need not very much, some need a lot of sunshine, and it's the same with us, with our own individual needs. And whatever they are, they're perfect for us. But we live in a culture, in a society where there's this cookie cutter approach that everyone should be able to do the same amount of, work, social activity, have, the same amount of things going on, and it's just not true. So understanding yourself, you know what it is that you need to flourish, and then once you know what your conditions are, then you can start to create a life that actually supports you. And you might have to make some big changes, but pushing yourself into, what's the saying? Square peg in a round hole. You're never going to be comfortable. So yeah, that's a lot of the work that I do is around that, helping people to really connect back more deeply with themselves, so that they can make choices that align with what they actually need.
Yeah. And just to finish off, I always like to sort of talk about, how to start the day, how to end the day. A lot of people into morning and evening routines or journaling, what have you. So what's something that you can leave our listener with for something like that to start and close the day?
Well, what I will say is it needs to be unique to you, because my morning routine might not work for you. I've actually got an article on my website that walks you through that process of creating the perfect morning routine for you. Again, it's about knowing when your most active times of the day are. If you wake up early, start with a meditation or some exercise. If you don't, you might like to schedule that later in the day. So it's not a very clear answer, because it's not a cookie cutter approach for each person.
But you're into it. I mean, you think that it's good to start off with some type of routine, not just sort of aimlessly sort of get up and say, oh wow, what am I going to do now? You think it's good to have some structure too?
Yes, I do for most people. Some people don't do very well with structure. That can be very confining, and they need it to be really spontaneous and free. So generally for most people, some kind of routine is good.
Yeah.
But for those people who don't like routine, they need to do what feels right.
Oh, well, that's good. Right. Cool. Fair enough.
You get to choose.
Well, that's good. And people work that out anyway, don't they? We sort of work it out, what works and what doesn't. Right?
Well, I hope so.
Anything else you want to leave us with before we say goodbye? Any last tips?
Last tips? Well, I think, that the biggest takeaway I would like people to come away with is really about just starting to accept themselves and understanding themselves better, and then they can make choices that are going to support them.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Samantha.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you.